With recent announced changes to the Commander format, including unbannings and new game changers, it's time to again take a look at how to upgrade or downgrade your decks. We'll only be looking at the new additions to the list in orange, but if you're looking for a guide on the rest of the list, check out my original Game Changers upgrade guide linked up top. Now, most important to note with these recent announcements, unbanned cards are immediately added to the Game Changers list. So Sway of the Stars, Braids Cabal Minion, Coalition Victory, Gifts Ungiven, and Panoptic Mirror are all playable in Commander for the first time, in some cases ever, and folks are looking at how to best utilize these new goodies. They've not been playable to downgrade, so let's just look at upgrading to these baddies. And we'll start by looking at Sway of the Stars. This massive 10 mana sorcery was banned for essentially restarting a game of Magic. If you've progressed to the point where you can make 10 mana or cast this for free, you probably don't want to restart the game, you probably want to win. The big exploit here is setting everyone's life totals to 7. This is a great counter to life gain decks that have gotten out of control. It single-handedly gets the table out from under any kind of lock too, so it definitely has its uses. Now, the number one thing you want to do is likely cast it for free. Nero Wild Mage, Joyra of the Gitu, or Narset Enlightened Master can all surprise out this reset easily enough, but don't be surprised if your opponents focus you down afterwards. You end up at 7 life too. Yuriko the Tiger Shadow would love to rip a Sway off the top too, just for the life loss. 10 damage to the dome of each opponent is, like both of these cards, a game changer. But you could also use this as an infinite mana outlet too. One of the issues with infinite mana decks is, if you don't have an outlet for it like Kinnan or Kenrith, that you run out of gas. But with any infinite mana combo and a Sway of the Stars, well, you can drop each player to 7, get a brand new grip of cards, and either hope that you get a game ender like a fireball in that new grip, or at least can rebuild a hell of a lot faster than your opponents can. This is basically a sorcery speed Cyclonic Rift on steroids, and you can get really tricky with it. Put a Psychosis Crawler under a Banishing Light style effect, cast a Sway of the Stars, and the Crawler will return with nothing else in play and see you draw 7 cards, making each opponent lose 7 life. But that could never happen, right? Braids Cabal Minion is a newly unbanned card that some of you old heads like me may remember. Braids was once on the banned as commander list for the ability to get her out sooner than anyone could establish any kind of foothold thanks to a dark ritual or other mana ramp. This left opponents sacrificing their only permanents in play every turn and never getting out from Braids' oppression. It comes as no surprise then that Braids is a stacks piece in Commander, like Smokestack or the Abyss. You want to make use of cards that give you small throwaway resources while your opponents are stuck without them. Drop a Bitter Blossom or an Ophiomancer and sack those tokens while your opponents sacrifice land, artifact, or creatures. If you're not up against a token deck that can be backbreaking until your opponents start casting 2 or more spells a turn, which means you want Braids out fast. Fast mana is a must here like Dark Ritual, Chrome Mox, or Lotus Petal. If you can get Braids out on turn 2 or even 3 while your opponents are still getting established, she can be a time walk every turn. Which is why I think you'll start to see her in the command zone again once in a while, but more than likely you'll see her in the 99 of Turgid God of Fright decks, Marin of Clan Nelth Toth decks, or Carmen Cruel Scarmarcher decks. She's certainly not as powerful as she once was, but she's a very useful tool for decks at higher power levels. You may even see her in some CEDH decks as well as a way to break opponents' stacks locks and keep them resource deprived. Are you planning on working Braids into any of your decks? Let me know in the comments. Next up, Coalition Victory is a card tons of folks have been clamoring for, as it's too slow as a victory condition in Commander's current day and age, but gives folks something to work towards, a challenge to complete. But is that really a challenge anymore? Controlling a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color isn't the hard part. A Dryad of the Elysian Grove or a Prismatic Omen gives you a land of each basic land type, where a Transguild Courier or a Kajali Wayfinder is all colors, and that can be achieved on turn 3. Heck, a Lane Line of the Guild Pack in your opening hand can have you achieve this on turn 1, where your only play is a Dryad Arbor. No, the real challenge with Coalition Victory is actually casting it. The vibe with modern era Commander is that an 8 mana spell should end the game. If you've progressed to a point where you're casting a spell like this, then you deserve to win the game. Since it can be responded to, there's nothing preventing opponents from removing anything that makes your permanents all colors, or your lands all types, or just countering your 8 mana spell. It makes this requirement a lot more set up to just protect. Giving your permanents untargetable with a privileged position is a start, and making your spells uncounterable with a Destiny Spinner means you're more likely to get this to happen, but still not assured. It's going to be a lot harder to pull off, for sure, and you should get some kind of achievement for making it happen. So let me know if, and how, you've managed to get a win with Coalition Victory. Gifts Ungiven is the big rip here. Gifts is long banned for the fact that it can function like a double Entomb, or it can function like a double Tutor, all at instant speed. Let me explain. See, Gifts says up to 4 cards, allowing you to select just 2. Your opponent needs to put 2 cards into the graveyard, so it just dumps 2 cards straight into the bin. This could be a Dread Return and a big-ass creature. It also functions just like an Intuition, now also recently added to the Game Changers list. Also an instant, Intuition lets you choose 3 cards and opponent must give you 1 of them. So don't give them a choice at all. Both cards can choose 3 cards that do the exact same thing, so your opponent has no good choices to make. This is where you'll see CEDH players grab 2 Stax pieces and a Savine's Reclamation, or 3 flavors of a Demonic Consultation, or 3 pieces that are 1-card combos with a Najeela, all at instant speed. This makes it Blue's best tutor, both Intuition and Gifts Ungiven, meaning you'll want to play them in any deck where you're also playing other tutors. And if you're playing some tutors, why not play all the tutors, leaving this safely relegated to bracket 4 or 5 decks at the high end of the gameplay spectrum. I could also see it played in bracket 3 self-milled decks that want to do some reanimation, or want to put cards like Wonder into the graveyard, so running Gifts Ungiven alongside an Entomb or Buried Alive is perfectly cromulent too. All cards can be fairly used, it just depends on the deck, the player, and the pod. Now last up on the now unbanned list is Panoptic Mirror. This was a boogeyman of the early Commander format for a few reasons. Namely, you could lock a game. Throw a board wipe under a mirror and no one can ever have creatures. Throw an extra turn spell under a mirror and no one else gets a turn. It's a remove or lose card. Or at least, it was. I cover how the mirror works and how it could be oppressive in a short linked up top, but the fact is that it often ended a game if you untapped with it is the biggest issue, and that can occur as soon as turns 4 or 5. But the mirror can also be used in largely harmless ways too. Throw a draw spell like a Thirst for Knowledge under it and suddenly it's an amazing draw engine. Throw a token generator like Hordling Outburst under it and suddenly it's the best token generator you could ever hope for. It's also amazing in decks that want you to cast 2 or more spells each turn. Shiko and Narset or Taiga Master Opportunist from Dragonstorm, or just 2 of the most recent examples of this, with Storm Force of Nature being another, all of them letting you get a free first spell each turn, upping your spell counts. But anything that gives you multiple upkeeps like a Paradox Haze, or commanders like Obeka Splitter of Seconds, or the Ninth Doctor love the mirror too, making for multiple free spells a turn. These free spells can range from advantage to removal, but if you want to get nasty, you can work to lock the game down. I have no doubt that strategies like this are bound for higher power games where 5 mana artifacts that even smell like a game ender aren't surviving until your upkeep. Now, before I move on to the cards newly added to the Game Changers list, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to never miss my deck building tips. Along with the unbannings, we've had several new cards moved up to Game Changers, some that were foreseen and questioned when the Game Changer draft was first released, and some that are really out of left field. Speaking of fields, let's start with Field of the Dead. This land was once a dread on the battlefield, tutored up by the long and still banned Golems. It turns into a passive source of zombie tokens once you have 7 or more lands with different names in play. This has been great additional riskless reach in landfall decks, where it features prominently in any deck that's intentionally built with non-basic lands in mind. Keep those basic lands away. Field here wants variety from your mana base. I personally feel that Field of the Dead doesn't deserve to be a game changer, though its exploitability and status as banned in formats like Modern and Pioneer may say otherwise. The fact that Commander as a format trends towards very little land-based removal, with mass land removal being relegated to higher bracket levels as it is, means that there's fear that this hits play and just makes 3, 4, or 5 zombies a turn for free. And apparently that's good enough to make it a game changer? Still, if you weren't playing this in decks like Taval the Balanced Scale or the Necrobloom, it's a perfect home for it. And if you were running effects that make a creature on landfall, like Zendikar's Royal or Rampaging Balos, then Field of the Dead is a perfect upgrade to your deck to bring it up in power level. This is right at home in bracket 3 decks and is, in my opinion, one of the least offensive new additions to the Game Changers list. Our other new colorless Game Changer is Mishra's Workshop. Now, fun fact, the only paper legal version of this land is from Antiquities and will set you back, holy moly, $2,600? For real? Well, yes, as this thing is basically a super ancient tomb just for artifacts, it can be a big leg up for any deck looking to ramp out stacks artifacts or mana artifacts and can represent a huge tempo swing. If you thought a 3-mana rock was expensive, imagine turning them all into 1-mana rocks, or playing 2 2-mana rocks on turn 1. That is a huge boost. But clearly, if you're using this card, you're proxying it, and it would make a great addition to any colorless deck, especially if your commander is an artifact too. Karn Legacy Reforged, Graz the Unstoppable, or Liberator Urza's Battlethopter would all love to get their hands on this ludicrously expensive land. It's no wonder it made the Game Changers list just based on availability alone. This is a rare sighting at any LGS, and you're more likely to see it slabbed or handcuffed to someone's wrist than played in a deck. Now onto our 2 new multicolored Game Changers, starting with Aura Shards. This is a notorious game-ruining enchantment that you'll get whines and moans from most players for casting. Free artifact and enchantment removal is an amazing resource, especially in any deck that's looking to make a lot of creatures at once. In a Jetmir deck, or a Brennar Ginger Sculptor deck, you're likely able to lock your opponents out of ever keeping artifacts or enchantments on board. And for that alone, I'm glad to see it as a game changer. If you've been running Aura Shards in your deck and now need to replace it, keep the power level down by looking at one-time removal pieces. Return to Dust or Aura Mutation, for instance. They both have upsides that can get rid of problems as needed. Other consistent artifact or enchantment removal can come on bodies like Null Mage Shepherd or Null Mage Advocate in an attempt to have consistent removal every turn without keeping people from, playing the game. The fact that this one card can shut down entire archetypes earns it a spot on the list, in my opinion. Even in a world with enough targeted removal to pop it when needed, chances are it's already eaten everyone's in-play resources already. Our second multicolor Game Changer is Notion Thief. The Thief here was a miss on the first Game Changer list for sure, and I'm glad they've added it in now. In a world where Hull Breacher and Leovold remain banned, it's clear that the format doesn't want to introduce asymmetrical card draw stopping at lower brackets. We'll see another example of this soon. But if you can't stop just your opponents from drawing multiple cards a turn, why not stop everyone drawing more than one card? Spirit of the Labyrinth is still legal in the format as a way to limit player card draw, and the only reason it's not a game changer is because it stops you from drawing more than one card a turn, too. If you're looking to punish your opponents for drawing more cards without stopping them from drawing more cards, there's Scrawling Crawler, Underworld Dreams, or Keteric Parasite, all of which get you closer to winning rather than keeping your opponents farther from playing the game. This is an appropriate add to the Game Changers list, in my opinion, and it really can be a spoil sport in brackets 2 or 3 games. Now onto our monocolor Game Changers. Remember to check out my last video for the first batch of cards from this list. And White's first new Game Changer is Humility. And wow, yeah, it's understandable. Humility is the original rules nightmare, removing all abilities from creatures and reducing their base power and toughness to just 1/1. And much like some other Game Changers already on the list, this is about shutting down strategies and turning off a deck's entire purpose. Imagine a format all about each player's legendary creature where those legendary creatures are absolutely useless. And yes, many of you are in the comments right now saying, run more removal. But as someone who has been shut down in CEDH by a Humility, the format with the most removal possible, It's easy to spout rhetoric and harder to actually act on it. Now, if you want to run Humility, you can run it next to Redain, God of the Worthy, or rather, her better half, Valkmira, Protector Shield. This artifact prevents 1 damage from opponent's sources, rendering all creatures unable to damage you. Orbs of Warding gives you the same effect too, and that's a soft lock. Now, of course, you can break the symmetry on Humility with Anthem effects or +1/+1 counters, but your opponents cannot, and most definitely aren't planning for a contingency for this. On top of it all, Red only has a small handful of ways to get rid of an enchantment, and it's easy to see some players and some entire pods shut off by this card. It's the exact same reason Iona is banned too. If you've got Humility in your decks and are looking to remove it, replace it with cards like Final Showdown, a one-time way to remove all abilities from creatures, or Overwhelming Splendor, a targeted Humility effect. Sure, that's mean too, but at least you aren't locking the whole board down. If you're also in other colors, Modern All-Star Dress Down is a great way to temporarily strip creatures of their abilities, and Classic Sudden Spoiling acts as a great gotcha effect too. Lots of options that don't put the table under remove or lose effects. White's second new game changer is T-Pro, or Teferi's Protection. Speaking of gotcha spells, this is the biggest and baddest of them. I'm a little on the fence about T-Pro as a game changer. It's a relatively harmless card that acts as a stay of execution for a player, their life total, and their permanence, but notably not their libraries. Many games have been turned into blowouts by a well-timed T-Pro in response to an Alpha Strike for what would seemingly be a win, blanking an opponent's Craterhoof Behemoth or Triumph of the Hordes. But does that make it a game changer? It's just as likely to save a player from getting their board wiped than it is to save the game. But it's that using it in response to another spell, that tips the scales a bit. Casting Teferi's Protection in response to a board wipe, or even your own board wipe, is completely one-sided and can start to get into the same territory as Cyclonic Rift, which, yes, is on the list too. It also interacts, oddly, with the newly unbanned Panoptic Mirror, allowing you to nope out of the game repeatedly, letting your opponents have only a small window of response to try and blow up your mirror. Otherwise, you can sit back until only one player remains, then phase back in ready to take them all out with most of your deck in hand too. But otherwise, it's just a gotcha spell. Like Heroic Intervention or Ink Shield, it's just going to save your life or your stuff more often than not. Run Unbreakable Formation or Selfless Squire for the same effect. T-Pro doesn't need to be on the list really. I think it's harmless. On to Blue's new entries. We've covered Intuition and Sway of the Stars, so let's look at Consecrated Sphinx. This is another bit of a head scratcher. Dies to removal, you all shout, and I don't disagree here. This is a big fat creature that gets you unprecedented card advantage if it survives just a couple of turns. Not turn cycles, mind you, just turns. And discourages players from drawing more cards in search of answers to it. So you can see that problem. Having just recently been on the receiving end of a turn 2 Con Sphinx thanks to some reanimation shenanigans, I can tell you that an opponent getting 2 cards a turn cycle to your 1 does in fact suck. But again, is it a game changer? No, not in my opinion at least. If you're able to stick a big flyer on the battlefield, good for you. You deserve some resources. No one is banning old Gnawbones for creating entirely too many treasure tokens, are they? But if you've got the Sphinx in your deck and are looking to downgrade power level, try draw doublers instead. Teferi's Ageless Insight and Alhammarret's Archive are where I'd recommend you start. They aren't creatures, so they're a little bit harder to sneak into play, and you need to be drawing your own cards rather than relying on your opponents, but they're both suitable replacements over the Sphinx. Just build your deck with some other ongoing draw sources and you'll be fine. Mind's Eye, while being a bit more mana intense, is definitely the fair version of this and can fit in any deck. If you're looking for a lower bracket strategy, I'd start here. Now the other new blue addition is Narset Parter of Veils, another excellent addition in line with Notion Thief. This is Blue's version of crushing draw strategies and creating asymmetrical effects that can lock players out of the game. Add in a Teferi's Puzzle Box, Wow, that guy has come up a lot in the last couple of minutes, huh? Well, anyway, add in Teferi's puzzle box, and you've got a lock on the game, providing players with a very, very small window to interact in hopes they draw an instant speed answer to either piece. Honestly, this is a good call as a game changer. The same can be said here as I said with Notion Thief. Punish draw effects rather than limit them. Scrawling Crawler is big, allowing opponents to draw cards, but maybe they don't want to draw cards anymore. I definitely don't want to see Narset in my games, and if you've got her in your decks, I know exactly what kind of trouble you're up to. Good riddance. On to black, let's start with Orcish Bowmasters. A scourge in several formats, this Lord of the Rings card is notorious for some of the same reasons as Humility and Notion Thief. What? How? Well, like with Humility, Orcish Bowmasters just stops some strategies by making it near impossible to keep 1 toughness creatures in play. And in some cases higher toughness creatures too. The ability to throw around damage for 2 mana while also making an ever-increasing threat is a lot of value that can also negate some opponent's strategies. Easy to see why it can be oppressive. But the fact that it has flash is similar to Notion Thief in that you can flash it in response to a wheel for disproportionate value. Casting this in response to a Wheel of Fortune gets you a 21/21 Orc army and 21 damage to throw around for just 2 mana. It is way too good for the mana value to the point where, even in Modern, decks are running Bowmasters to remove Bowmasters. It's Umezawa's Jitte and Jace the Mind Sculptor all over again. Instead, punish draws with damage to an opponent's face. Fate Unraveler or Spiteful Visions are both great here, letting you get closer to winning faster and letting your opponents have a chance at doing something. If you're going to shut a game down, then at least try to win, not just try to make the game longer. It's a good add to the list, in my opinion. Also a good add to the list is a card that I thought should have been in the first draft of the Game Changers, Necropotence. In my last video, I cursed up and down that this level of card draw at this mana value is way too good. In a world where Bolas's Citadel is on the Game Changers list, so should Necro be. And here we are. This is a card that's being used as a Phyrexian Arena or Black Market Connections pumped to the max, and provided you have the life to spare, is enough to close games out all on its own. It's often used in CEDH to dump your entire life total into, to see if you can draw into your combo very early game. Seeing that kind of play pattern in lower power games, even if just used for value, isn't something that should be allowed or encouraged. I've taken advantage of this before. You've taken advantage of this before. Let's just keep it out of bracket 2 lists. No sense running it in your skeleton-themed bracket 1 deck either. Glad to find that it finally is on the list. Now, believe it or not, Red has a pair of Game Changers too, Gamble being the first. To bring it in line with the other colors all having their 1 mana tutors added to the list, Red's only unconditional tutor is now a Game Changer, and that's not a bad thing. Yes, there's the meme that Gamble is Red's Entomb, but in all reality, this is a lot of power for a 1 mana spell. Seeing that Vampiric Tutor and Enlightened Tutor, among the other 1 mana tutors, are in this list, this makes perfect sense for power level alignment. If you're looking for tutoring in Red, look at Goblin Engineer or Imperial Recruiter. Their scopes are much narrower, but if you need the card types they get, they're the best of the best. This makes tons of sense to keep on the list for consistency's sake, and poor Red needs a few more W's in its repertoire. Speaking of the other Red addition to the Game Changers is Deflecting SWAT, and again, I see this as bringing it in line with Blue's free counterspells. SWAT does just that, counters a spell, or at least directs it away from you and your stuff. And costing 0 mana, like Fierce Guardianship or Force of Will, it's a wonder it wasn't on the list already. There's still a million other deflect spells like Untimely Malfunction or Shunned, but the difference is that you have to pay mana for those. That's the big topic on this one. It's too much protection to provide for a spell without costing mana. I'm glad this is a game changer, it just makes sense to include it alongside the other spells on the list. Red decks can live without it. Now, the biggest loser on this round of updates has got to be green, with a record 5 new game changers on the list, none of which being recent unbannings. Starting with Crop Rotation, which I feel has to be a response to the fact that Commander players hate running land destruction. However, as a 1-mana instant speed tutor for any land straight to the battlefield, it is in fact strong. And you can get this effect with a Sylvan Scrying, albeit sorcery speed and straight to your hand, so unless your deck needs to get a Nykthos or Cabal Coffers, I can see the logic in running a crop rotation with limited game changer availability. Land tutors are a dime a dozen. The fact that this one is instant speed and straight to play for any land card is great. Tempt with Discovery is another one along the same lines, and I feel these get run in a lot of the same decks, so you're still not for lack of options. Next up though is Food Chain, and as the Play to Win boys say, Food Chain wins games. Used near exclusively in CEDH as an archetype to itself, it's often paired with creatures that can be cast from exile to create infinite mana to recast your commander over and over again. Pair it with an Eternal Scourge, a Squee, or a Misthollow Griffin, and you can cast your commander forever, having them deal damage, mill cards, or otherwise help you win the game. It's a good move. If you're looking for something similar, good luck. There's really nothing else like it for a good reason. You typically only want to play this where it's your win con, and no one wants to see a Food Chain deck played in brackets 1 or 2. A good add to the list without a doubt. Then we have Natural Order. Green's way to tutor any green creature straight to the battlefield. Often use an Elf Ball decks to go grab a Craterhoof Behemoth straight into play, or otherwise go grab a combo creature. It's falling in line with the Commander format panel's stance on tutors being overall bad news at lower power levels. There are other ways to get this kind of effect though, like Finale of Devastation, Birthing Pod, or Eldritch Evolution to name a few. So again, having this on the Game Changers list doesn't mean you can't do this, just that you'll have to work a little harder for it. Being that it's banned in Historic and Brawl, it's certainly got a precedent set for itself. A fine add to the list, but one with very little overarching effectiveness. Then we have Seedborn Muse. Poor Seedborn Muse. Half of its banned cousin, Prophet of Kruphix, Seedborn Muse is used to get you a lot of value in a lot of decks, or just be okay in some decks as well. If you can't make use of all of the mana you're untapping each turn, this is just basically giving your creatures a kind of vigilance each turn. But it's those decks that can make use of the resources, like a Kenrith, or a Balin, or an Atla Palani deck, that really get out of control. We've all been on the receiving end of someone getting entirely too much value out of their Seedborn Muse, as everyone digs for answers, only to find that the Seedborn Muse player now has more cards and mana to protect their creatures over and over again. And now that recently we have 2 new Flash enablers in Valley Floodcaller and High Fate Trickster, you can build your own Prophet of Kruphix in most decks. And for that, I'm glad it won't be seen at lower power levels. You can still untap your stuff regularly, but you'll have to choose what to untap. A Drum Bellower will untap your creatures each turn, while a Wilderness Reclamation will untap your lands at the end of your turn. Each of these are fine options and leave you with more than enough resources to steamroll opponents. Don't get greedy. But Green's last entry to the new Game Changers list is Worldly Tutor. The last, and I mean the last this time, of the classic 1-mana tutors to be introduced to the list. Bringing it in line with Mystical Tutor and Vampiric Tutor, introducing Worldly Tutor to the list is definitely a consistency play. Why let Green have these toys consequence-free when each other color needs to suffer with Game Changers? Now that Gamble and Worldly Tutor are on the list, we have the full cycle as Game Changers, which just makes sense. And if you're aching for a creature tutor, there's still Sylvan Tutor, which does the same thing, but at sorcery speed. Though it's a good bit of cash since it hasn't seen a healthy reprint in a while, so rely on some of your other creature tutors like Eladamri's Call, too. Again, plenty of options, but Worldly Tutor is the best of them. A fine add to the Game Changers list. Now that's it for the new additions, but that's not all there is to talk about yet, as there was one card removed from the Game Changers list, Trouble in Pairs. Another card that I personally moaned about in the first draft of the list, Trouble in Pairs is White's best generically good card draw engine, and having it be a game changer was a wild call in my opinion. It's like they actually have something against White being good at all over there. But now that it's off the Game Changers list, I'm glad, and it's perfectly fine and fair to have in lower power decks, alongside Mangara or Esper Sentinel, which are both not on the Game Changer list. This is a solid move that I'm happy for. Just reprint it into the ground so many other players can enjoy playing with it too. And that's it for this round of changes to the Commander format. We've been promised we'll get no new bans for the rest of the year, but that's not to say that we won't see some other format changes later. What do you think of these new game changers and unbans? Let me know in the comments and slam that subscribe button if you found today's video helpful. While you're here, be sure to check out my sponsor, MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks to specific brackets thanks to their built-in automated bracket detection tools. Never misjudge your decks again, and be sure to follow my profile to never miss any of my brews. If you want to pick up any of the cards for this list, be sure to go to Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC now for 5% off your orders from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only one shipping fee. Save money and time today. And if you want to sell off your cards, whether they be unused or just duplicates, go to Card Conduit. If you're selling out of anything from Pokemon to Star Wars to Magic, get premium rates for your cards. Ship them unsorted today and get a check in the mail. If you were inspired to brew, you have to hit that subscribe button. Be a gem and check out some of the other videos on the channel right now too. And as always, good luck and have fun!